And we're recording. All right.
Awesome.
So, hello. This
Hi.
is PME or Worries, or again, whatever you want to call me. Also known as Matthias in real life.
Cool.
And I am here with kind of an
Zach.
interesting person to talk to, Zach, who
Yeah.
is non binary. Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about really how difficult it is to be kind of myself
Mm-hmm.
in online spaces because, my gender in and of itself is a political statement,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite difficult to kind of get around. And I've had really bad experiences in the past. And I was just kind of wondering if you had any advice in regards to that. Um, I'm very happy to kind of explain what being non-binary is about.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some people aren't up to kind of scratch with the lingo, and that's totally cool. Basically, I don't identify as any particular gender. I never really have. I've always kind of been ambiguous with it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of lean more to kind of a more masculine identity, I suppose. I
Mm-hmm.
was born female, so there was a kind of when I was growing up, there was a lot of what's going on? I'm gay. I'm not gay. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, I was reading about genders online because my friend was trans. He was a trans man, so that's a sort of a woman who wants to be a man, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Yeah, he was like, well, you're not this gender, you're not that gender. Maybe you're non-binary. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh god, okay. And it kind of sounds like a Tumblr identity.
Yeah, and I think our lingo for it, like in common usage, it's really not caught up with it either. Like even
Mm,
our biological definitions of gender have kind of changed a lot in the past. Like I've read up a fair bit on the biology side of it, which is basically like in the old days, biologists used to think of gender as like this. There is A and B,
mm-hmm.
and the more we've like kind of started to look into, well, what about the genetics? What about the social influences? What about the hormonal biology? Well, it starts to look more like a bimodal distribution, which is like it's more like a curve where there's just two
Mm.
poles, and then everything is kind of there's like obviously two things that people tend towards, but there's a whole area in between, and the far reaches. There are some people who are very very masculine men, and there are some people who are very very feminine women.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much into the sort of looking at things and sort of debating things. I really like that idea, and I think it's exciting that
Mm-hmm.
gender, which has been so, I suppose, solid and rigid for so many years of humans, Western humanity's history. It's exciting that it's up for debate now. Um, and I mean, some people wouldn't agree with me, and that's fine. I'm not here to kind of change anyone's minds, if that makes sense. But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's good to kind of talk about. I think if you think about it, if you question yourself, am I a man? Am I a woman? It can lead to some really interesting questions about yourself,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
you know, getting to know yourself
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's quite different. And I think I've met some people who have been very staunchly against questioning. Um, and it's kind of sad because it kind of gets them to a very rigid mindset and doesn't let them kind of be free and explore themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good to explore
Yeah, I mean,
yourself, really.
I can generally agree with that. It's like it used to be back in the day, and it still kind of is with young men, people who are very afraid that they're gay, and it's like
Mm.
there's still kind of that gay panic left in some people.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's like
Definitely.
I sometimes get people asking me like in this PMU words context, like, am I gay because I once slept with a friend? And it's like I don't know. I mean, did you
Yeah.
did you enjoy it? Like, is it something you want to do again? Was it because you were attracted to him? Like, there's a lot of factors that go into deciding whether your sexuality is whatever label you want to put on it. And at the end of the day,
Definitely.
like it's not as rigid as we want to think about it that way. Like, it's gay is a very wide category. You can be like, I just 90% prefer men, but I haven't really found a woman I'm attracted to. I'm just kind of ambivalent about it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's exciting. I think this is the thing with all kind of LGBT
Mm-hmm.
identities. You know, none of it is rigid. Some people can be very rigid. Um, and I think that's a shame. There's a kind of a big sect of the LGBT community that I have a real problem with, and I
Mm-hmm.
think this is something that surprises people: the fact that actually the LGBT community is not as open and friendly as it would appear. You'd think
Yeah.
that all these people who have faced so much oppression would be very friendly, but they're really not. Um,
Yeah, I mean, they're people at the end of the day. They're gonna have their weird quirks, and some of them have some really
exactly.
weird opinions.
Oh God, yeah, for sure, for sure. I think that that's the thing. I think like there are things. I don't know if you've heard of turfs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are a thing.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know, turfs are kind of trans exclusionary radical feminists who don't believe that trans women are actually women, and it's all messy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's interesting because they don't want to debate gender either. Gender for them is very rigid as well, despite being, a lot of them are lesbians, and they say they love women, and it's like, well, your definition of a woman is very, very finite,
Mm-hmm.
which is a shame. I think anyway. I've ID'd as a lesbian forever. I kind of more idea as queer,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a bit more open. But I mean, these people who claim to love women, I don't know, they don't seem to. They love a particular kind of woman, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And then they go on to say that trans women aren't, sorry, that trans men aren't men because they don't have, the sort of bits and pieces needed, and that's where everything kind of just falls apart, really,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
If you've like kind of already gotten to the conclusion that X is not Y, then you've kind of like left the argument completely because, well, okay, like what would it take to change your mind that they are Y? Well, there's nothing that can
Exactly,
change my mind. Well, why would I discuss it with you then? Like, there's no point in debating it.
exactly, which I think is a shame. I mean, I think particularly now we live in such a polarized political world. I mean, I was discussing with someone the other day about Star Trek not being political, which was like,
The
what?
original theory of like how we can live in a communist utopia where nobody really needs anything.
Yeah,
That
I
doesn't
know.
sound political at all.
I know that made me laugh. I was like, "What? Are you blind?" And they were like, "Oh well, I like it when it's subtle." I was like,
Mhm.
"How the fuck is Star Trek subtle?"
And I
I
think
mean,
that's a common thing that I've had to grapple a lot with in the past, like because I am, by all accounts, I am a straight guy and I'm
mm-hmm.
white, the majority ethnicity in my country. So there's a lot of like thematic subtlety is not really something I've ever had to worry about,
Mm-hmm.
and like the idea of things being more than they appear is maybe something I learned about in school, but that's about it. But
Yeah, for sure.
like the
That's the thing.
waking up to the idea like, well, this author is a communist, so their writing is probably influenced by that. That's something that's been interesting to explore afterwards as I've gotten
Oh, I
older.
bet. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's kind of difficult to when you come to that conclusion, and it's a difficult conclusion to come to. Um, that, oh, the thing that I'm reading isn't a blank slate for me to
Mm,
just, death of the author is a thing, and I believe in that. But you know, looking at someone's work and being like, okay, well, this definitely has political leanings,
yeah.
and sort of the first time you realize that what you're reading isn't blank, it's quite shocking.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, okay. So
Yeah,
some
especially
people
like
deal
if you've
with it
been
well.
raised with like the death of the author, it's just like that's the normal way to analyze. But I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, at the end of the day, like if you read Narnia, there's some pretty
Oh boy.
obvious biblical undertones, and if you read Lord of the Rings, there's some kind of unfortunate racial implications,
Oh my god. Yeah. Oof.
and it's just
For
like being
sure.
aware of that is pretty good. Like it's
Yeah, I think it's good.
just knowing about it is like even something like Lovecraft, who had a very complicated relationship with race. Let's just put it that way. Like,
Yeah.
but being aware of that has it doesn't like lessen my enjoyment of his work. It's just context for
Exactly.
why did he describe these people this way?
Exactly. No, I 100% agree with you. I think there's this kind of in left spaces and leftist spaces, I find, particularly on Tumblr, I will say, is
Hmm.
that there's this kind of the cancel culture,
Hmm.
which is just ridiculous. It's like, oh, this thing has a problematic thing in it, therefore, um, it cannot be enjoyed. And I don't think that's the correct way to think about things. Yes, criticize, and yes, be mindful of what you're reading and think about the messages there, but you can still enjoy it. I mean, World of Warcraft is so full of problematic stuff. I would not even know where to start with
What do
World
you
of
mean?
Warcraft.
Like male blood elves being misidentified as women in like two or three quests, and the weird racial paradigm with dark iron dwarfs being the ones that live underground, and
Well, there's quite a few. I think the biggest one that I can think of being a Tauren player
yeah,
would
Grimtoad
probably
and
be
Tauren being the aggressive
yeah,
ones that live in the wild.
yeah, and the fact that you've got blatant cultural appropriation
Yeah, of
of
course, like
race.
that's
It's like, oof. But
that's
at the same time, I love it. Like, so
yeah, because that was the trope of fantasy back in the day when Warcraft was created.
exactly,
Like that was just how fantasy authors wrote things.
exactly, and I think it is a thing of its time, and I think that's fine. I mean, I could criticize something and still find it enjoyable, and I think
Hmm.
that's the thing that people, I think, on both sides of the argument seem to forget is that you can be critical of something, and if you are critical of something, it means you're actually paying attention. It means that you care about the thing enough to
Yeah, for sure.
bother. Um, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic. I think that people, they hear a criticism or something political being said, and immediately their hackles are raised, and it's like, oh, here we go,
Mm,
um, which is a shame.
yeah. Uh, you asked me at first if I had any advice for like dealing with like so you've encountered situations obviously where being non-binary is not like I would say socially acceptable to be very very correct about it,
Yeah,
but
for sure. I mean, for example, in one of the old guilds I was in
mm-hmm,
on World of Warcraft, my the first time I kind of was open about being non-binary
mm-hmm,
in an online space that wasn't, Tumblr,
mm-hmm,
um, I was with this guy in his guild, and it was really pretty rough. But basically, what I found out after I left from one of my friends who stayed in there for a little while longer, I found out that he, every time I signed off a call, he would laugh at me and would say, "Oh, start calling me it," and sort of just being really kind of dehumanizing to
mm-hmm.
me behind my back. And then, the next day be all smiles and like, "We support you," and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very anxious about
Yeah, I can
that
understand
and
that for
sort of,
sure.
yeah, for sure. It was really rough, and now it's just easier for me to be like, "Oh, well, I'm a trans guy,"
Mm-hmm,
because that seems to kind of make people less wary and or more accepting,
mm-hmm,
depending on the situation. But it's kind of like, I'll accept male pronouns
mm-hmm.
if I have to, because I've kind of learned to deal with that. Female pronouns make me cringe and die. I've never felt comfortable really being addressed as a woman,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not because I think women are weak or anything. It's
Yeah, it
just not
doesn't
my
like
gender.
that would be like if I found myself like being identified by female pronouns, I would find it kind of weird, and
Yeah,
I think
it's really weird. It's like, okay.
like the first time it's kind of whatever, maybe they misspoke, but if it's like, do they actually see me
Consistent.
as something I don't feel like, I can understand it being really uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And male pronouns are more suitable anyway. I mean, I did like play around with the idea of being a trans guy,
Mm-hmm.
when I was a little bit younger, but it doesn't really suit me. It's just, I don't know, male things, yeah, okay, but I'm not 100% on that really.
Mm-hmm.
Much more comfortable being kind of non-binary, mostly because it's actually a nice space to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of comfortable. You can be male or female in this space, but you're not defined by it, which is what I enjoy. But unfortunately, we live in a society that heavily codes gender in clothing, in manner, in speech, in everything,
Yeah.
um, which means you have to play by society's rules, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, online spaces, particularly in World of Warcraft, I would say it's a more, I would say, conservative mindset I've found,
Depending
in
on where you
general.
go, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely, depending where you go. I found Alliance much more conservative politically than Horde,
Mm-hmm.
um, which was a really weird situation to be in. I thought it would be the other way around. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was Alliance that I had most of the trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I wasn't as open as I was in Alliance in the Horde, so I could,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it comes down to like people who play with video games, and like I hate to be the one applying the stereotype, but a lot of us are young men, early 20s, maybe late teens, whose
yeah,
understanding of the world maybe doesn't go much farther than our school textbooks.
yeah,
And from there, people especially on the internet, have been gotten really good at pumping our heads full of ideas that are not very well thought out and maybe not very like friendly to LGBT people or people of other nationalities or people of other religions, and that's a
Definitely.
big problem online that we're still dealing with.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, the sort of 4chan and the
I mean,
lurking
yeah, I was
therein.
gonna say like, hey, that's where I came from.
Did
Uh,
you really?
oh
Ah.
yeah, I wouldn't say like I'm a reformed chatter or anything, but I used to just to take an example, I used to be a big follower of Stephen Molyneux, if you know who that is.
I vaguely heard, definitely heard the name.
He's the guy who kind of peddles he peddles a white genocide conspiracy theory for one,
Oh my god, yeah,
and
I know exactly who he's talking about
he's
now.
yeah
Yeah.
he's kind of a pseudo philosopher, but he has a very dedicated following fan base, and I used to
I
listen to
bet.
him a lot, like because his language, his self help stuff is actually like it's based on real self help guru stuff. So that was what
Mm-hmm.
drew me in, and once you're in there, well, like he has the answers for why you're feeling estranged from society. It's
Yeah,
just
definitely.
kind of not the answers that help.
Yeah, I think like that's the thing. I think there are a lot of disenfranchised young white men, and I think those are the people we need to reach out to
Hmm.
talk to because they are feeling like oh my god, suddenly there's all these women characters in my comic book shows, and suddenly there's all of these people of color and these LGBT people. Where am I? I'm not being
Hmm.
represented anymore, and I wouldn't say I feel sorry for them. That's really sort of
But you're like,
patronizing.
yeah, I mean, it's since you like, if you're non-binary, you felt that way the whole time. So like, I can.
Yeah.
It's more of like understanding where they're coming from, probably than sympathy.
Definitely, yeah, exactly. I definitely understand, and it's like I'd love to be able to reach out to them and kind of talk to them and
Hmm.
be like, "Listen, I completely get where you're going. I understand 100% how you're feeling. Um, let's chat it out. Let's talk it out."
Hmm.
And it's difficult because
Yeah,
they
because
go
it's
onto these
it's
online spaces.
it's
Yeah,
gonna say like it's cool to like have that conversation with someone who is generally like, afraid of white genocide. It's interesting to
yeah,
have that conversation with them if you can get them in a space where they're able to talk openly. Like I do that a fair bit again as part of running this thing. And
yeah,
people like it's a mistake to attack them in the sense that because those people are genuinely terrified. Like they are afraid of their white race dying out or whatever, or like their video
definitely.
games going away. So getting angry at them doesn't really help. It doesn't really.
It doesn't help at all, and I think that's the thing. I think people on the left forget that they're people and they are afraid,
Hmm.
and you know what, fear speaks much louder than any debate you can have with them because they are afraid and we need to talk to them about it and
Hmm.
to kind of to, to discuss things and show them actually it's okay, it's not happening the way you think it's happening, it's all right, but yeah,
You just
it's
like
like,
let them know it's not because they're taking your anime titties away. Those games are actually still being made and they're getting a lot of funding. It's just now there's another fan base.
yeah, exactly, it's just there are other people here, it's okay, just keep on doing your thing, it's fine, it's just other people are here now,
Hmm.
who are louder and more obvious. I think that's the interesting thing is the fact that is the case that people kind of who were minorities are becoming more vocal, um, and that's what's got them feeling afraid. And
Hmm.
that's fair enough. It's new, it's different, and it's change is hard, particularly when you've been in these circles for years
Oh
and years
yeah.
and years.
And like if you're used to the idea of well, gaming is where I go to turn off politics. Like it's
Yeah,
where I go to relax. Then hello, wake up call.
yeah. Oh my god. Oh my goodness, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the thing. Like, gaming has always been kind of the refuge of the lonely young boy. I mean, have grown up with these kinds of people, and
Hmm.
I completely understand
Yeah, and I
that is
like
the
I am
shelter.
one of them. So yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. Before I met my current partner, I was definitely that.
Hmm.
My partner lives in LA. We're happy together. We're actually engaged.
Oh,
It's all
nice.
of a
Congratulations.
thing. Thank you. She lives far away though.
Hmm.
But before I met her, I was kind of like, oh shit, I'm never gonna find anyone,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I know I would have been prey to that kind of that thinking,
Hmm.
that fear that everything's going to be bad and everything political is bad and we shouldn't be doing all this stuff. But then I went on Tumblr and I got radicalized on Tumblr to be very far left. I was way more left wing. My goodness, I'm not so bad anymore. I got really
Yeah, I
radicalized on
kind
that.
of,
So.
I think I swung really far right at some point, and
Mhm.
then I could just kind of, I had a huge mental breakdown. I think I've talked about this before, but like I had a breakdown at the age of, I want to say 17, where I like physically couldn't get out of bed for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's hard.
I like told my parents, or like my parents worked a lot, so they weren't really home often, so it was kind of easy to lie and get away with, well, I've been to school today, so what did you do? Well, the usual.
Yeah.
It's kind of like easy to get the escape at that point, and then it eventually just completely collapsed, and then I reached out to a stranger and kind of like talked about it and figured out, well, maybe life isn't super shit, and maybe talking with people about how you feel is not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I would like to know if kind of all of that sort of right wing rhetoric was that what got you there, or was it after that that you started looking into this?
I would say like I mean my family is fairly like we're social democrats pretty
Yeah.
much all the way through. So I would say I was a moderate. Sucked them when I was younger, and then when I started feeling alienated, when I started noticing I was feeling alienated, that's when I started looking up online the kind of do
Mm.
you know what Gamergate is? That's probably
Sounds
a good
familiar. Yeah.
that's a good jumping off point because
Yeah.
someone wrote linked me that blog of the guy who was
Oh
cheated on
Jesus.
by his girlfriend or whatever, and like I
Yeah.
read that and it clicked in my brain in that moment because at the time I felt, and I didn't notice that before it kind of like surfaced, that I felt very frustrated about the idea of why does everyone else have a partner, but
Hmm.
A, I don't, and B, I don't really feel like getting a partner. Is there
Yeah.
something wrong with me, or is there something wrong with the world around me?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that became a spiral down a deep hole. Let's just say that,
I bet. Yeah, that's difficult.
mm,
It's really difficult.
and then
Um,
eventually I just climbed out of it, and here I am, therapy,
I think
and
you did really well. Yeah, definitely. For sure. And seriously, I think highly of you, to be honest. I think it's really difficult
thanks.
to sort of get yourself out of that place. It's so dark and it's so
Hmm.
easy to stay there. It takes real hard work to kind of pull yourself out. Um,
Yeah, I mean at
yeah.
the time the like it was either figure out a way to get out of there or I don't want to say like kill myself. I probably wouldn't have done that, but I would have definitely just continued the decline into dropping
Mm.
out of school and physically not moving from bed and
It's like wasting away.
completely, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's really weird. You waste away and waste away, and then suddenly you're nothing, and it's
Mhm.
like you're just this kind of this ball inside. It's yeah, horrible. I've seen it happen. It hasn't happened to me personally. I've been quite lucky.
Mhm.
But, yeah, I mean, when it comes to kind of mental health, depression, anxiety, I have ADHD,
Mhm.
which has been getting worse as I've been getting older, and it's a lot less kind of hyperactivity and much more. It's called perceived rejection syndrome, which is very common with people with ADHD, and it's kind
Okay.
of you see things that aren't really there. So someone will say something, or they didn't invite me somewhere,
Mm.
and I'll perceive that as a deliberate sort of attack. I've been
Okay.
getting
Yeah.
much better at handling it because
Mhm.
it gets overwhelming. Um, with that, comes the tendency to isolate and isolate and isolate, and then you kind of become sort of people stop inviting you places, and it
Mhm.
gets worse and worse and worse. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, like it's just a
Um,
self-reinforcing effect, basically.
exactly, exactly, and it takes a lot to kind of oh, stop that. I know this
Mhm.
is not me talking. This is my mental illness, and I need to stop doing that.
Mhm.
So yeah, oof, ADHD sucks.
I can imagine. I don't think it like I probably never had anything bad enough to be diagnosed, but I've definitely had like the kind of not hyperactivity, but the attention deficit that
Yeah,
some people with ADD talk about a lot. I used to have a lot of that, which
yeah,
has
it's
thankfully gotten
difficult.
better as I've gotten older. Like it's the reverse of you basically. So hopefully it
Damn
stays that way.
it! Damn it! Yeah, I need to figure that shit out.
Mm.
That's the thing. I mean, okay, so I left university and I did creative writing and theatre at university, which was about as useful as a paperclip. I mean, really
Mm.
rubbish. Um, so I left university and it was like falling off a cliff.
Mhm.
Literally just boom, straight into depression immediately. I was looking for jobs. I think I applied for 250 jobs at least. I got one interview, one rejection letter, and that was it. It was
Mhm.
just radio silence everywhere else. I was like, oh my god, what am I going to do with my life? I need to move out. I want to have a, move out. Want to have a family. Do all that shit. So then I was very lucky to be able to sort of look to my dad, who is a computer programmer. He was like, listen, I'll take you on as an intern. Get on the dole because I'm not paying you. I was like, okay. Um, get on the dole. I will teach you how to computer programmer. Like, and I was like, okay. And here I am a year later,
Mhm.
um, waiting for my first job offer to kind of go through.
Yeah. Good luck with
Um,
that.
Thank you. Yeah. So time definitely does change things. And I think that's the thing with depression and mental illness is that people, when you're locked into that feeling of utter dire shit, you have to kind of remember that actually it's going to be okay. A year from now, 2 years from now, it's hard to think, but it'll be okay eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the big part of often in treating depression is like to keep you going, to keep you not isolating yourself completely, and to keep you like in your situation of applying for jobs is to keep you. Well, you're gonna keep applying. You're gonna keep
Yeah,
making the effort to get out every day. Like because once
exactly.
your mental health starts to suffer, if your physical health starts suffering, it just doubles back on the mental health as well.
It sure does. Yeah, your body starts falling apart, and you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
oh god, and then
And then
you
the
end up with
depression develops into self-esteem issues, and this self-esteem issues develop into anxiety, and like it's just a cascading effect if you don't get it under control.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the thing that really is worrying. I mean, I've been going to the gym a lot now
Mhm.
because my grandmother died a few months ago in December last year, which was difficult.
Mhm.
Generally quite difficult. Um, and she had a really rare form of cancer. It took her quite quickly, and it wasn't in the end the cancer that killed her. It was
Mm.
because she was very she didn't really respond well to the treatment
Mm.
given, which was a very invasive surgery, basically. And I just have memories of her being laying out in hospital. It was just like, oh my god, this is real. This is happening.
Mhm.
And it was kind of from then on, I was like, right, I need to get healthy, eat better, exercise, need to do all this stuff. And since then, I've been kind of doing that. And it's been really interesting watching my family who lived with my grandmother kind of do the opposite.
Mm.
And it was like, you're not seeing the cycle that I'm seeing because I'm far away. I can see this happening. I can see every one of them that happening to them, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
the bad part. Like once you start to spiral, you don't really notice it yourself once you, unless you're like very deep into it.
Yeah, once then it's nearly too late.
Yeah, usually it is. Like
Yeah,
I wouldn't say necessarily too late, like you can still get help or whatever. But
definitely.
unless you're like have someone actually keeping track, it might be well be too late
Yeah,
by the time you notice.
definitely. And that's the thing. So the other thing that happened, my grandmother lived with my aunt and my cousin and my grandfather, and they all lived
Mhm.
together in the same house. And they had this dog called Poppy. And last week, I think it was, or week before last, she had to be put down,
Mhm.
and that was harder than my grandmother dying because it was
Mm.
so like my grandmother dies and then their dog dies. It was like one thing after another. It's like, oh, poor bastards. It was really difficult, but
Yeah, I mean
also
that
kind of
that's the thing with like a pet. It's usually like when your family members die, sometimes the pet is like the tether you have left to remember them by. Sometimes I
yeah,
heard
exactly.
similar
And it's
things
like,
before.
oh god, it's terrible. It's just like, if I was like a different person, I'd probably laugh about it
Mhm.
because it's so oof, oh god. But yeah, sorry, we got off track, but
Yeah, I mean that's the best thing about conversations like this is like they can wander where we want them to. So.
yeah, definitely. I think that's the good thing. I think it's good to have conversations about difficult topics as well
Mhm.
because you get a different perspective, and I think perspective is kind of a useful thing to have,
Mhm.
particularly these days. But I was curious about kind of your advice on sort of being the gender that I am
Yeah,
in online spaces.
and obviously that's like as you mentioned yourself, with your gender being a political statement in and of itself, is kind of that's probably where you're going to encounter a lot of the problems. Like,
Oh God,
um,
hugely, yeah.
because like people who have a very solid ideological foundation wherein gender roles are that rigid,
Hmm.
the thing that you might be able to do is instead of changing their mind on it, is kind of just like maybe correct them the first time and then just
Leave it.
if they scoff about it or if they laugh about it, if they just call out and say this is not helpful, this is not productive way to have conversation. You wouldn't like it if I called you a girl either when you clearly identify as male. So
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the perspective part might be a really good thing to bring up. It's like, listen, what you're
Yeah,
saying is really hurtful in a way you probably are not aware of. So let me try to explain it to you. Having
yeah,
a way to contextualize it for them would probably be a good start.
yeah. I think you're right. I think that kind of like, hey, listen, you wouldn't like it if I did it to you. Um, would probably be like, oh, okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. The pronouns that non-binary people use, they them in English,
Mm-hmm.
it can be quite kind of like, oh shit. People do it kind of thoughtlessly. They don't really think about they them there when they're kind of just talking. Because I've heard people use it just whenever, but when they have to think about, oh, this person isn't he or her, oh
Mm-hmm.
shit, what is it? Um, it can be quite difficult to kind of get used to that, and I get that 100%.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
mean, it
just
depends on like how much your language usage in day to day is gendered. Like if your background is in a language that doesn't have, I think it's Finnish that doesn't have like just grammatical genders, for example. So if you refer to objects in Finnish, there's no like grammatical gender, which is obviously making it more easier for them to adapt to the idea of, well, people want to be called whatever they want to be called.
yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting, like on the certain subject of non-binary, like being a kind of Tumblr gender.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a few people who are like famous people. I hate to use that, but who are non-binary and are kind of open about it. And I think in John Wick 3 that has just been released, there's a non-binary character.
Yeah, and I think
Um,
like the
yeah.
French act in Eurovision this year was non-binary as well. I'm not entirely
Hey.
sure on that one, but
Yeah,
someone told
we're
me.
there. We're there.
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of hidden, which is fair enough. I
Which I
mean,
mean, I was gonna say like that used to be the same thing for gay and trans people. So
oh, hugely. I mean, we've come leaps and bounds when it comes to representation with trans and kind of gay people.
mm-hmm.
My goodness, which is great, and it kind of links all back into that kind of young white men feeling disenfranchised
Mm-hmm.
because they're heterosexual. That's fine. I don't have anything against the hets as it's known, but that they have a thing against us. I suppose is the weird situation you end up having.
If you want my really hot take, there is like it's not that they on their own have developed something necessarily against non-binary or trans people or whatever. It's that there's a lot of money at stake in
Oh God,
the
yeah.
kind of politics that peddles rigid gender boundaries, for example.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oof,
And if
I
you're
mean,
like if
kids' toys. Oof.
yeah, I mean if you're or like if you're an older person, for example,
Mm-hmm.
the I want to say the populist right party here is kind of pseudo quackery in that their view of science is whatever the science view was 50 years ago, because that's
Okay.
where their
Yeah.
voters are. It's old people,
Mm-hmm.
and if they want to try to appeal to younger voters, that's just the way they're going to keep talking. So that's how their younger voters are going to talk too.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing. I think a lot of the time there's kind of this when your family and you have been entrenched in this kind of mentality. Like I'm a loyal Labour voter,
Mm-hmm.
always have been, always voted Labour. I mean, I feel really disenfranchised with them at the moment, but I
Mm-hmm.
still voted for them. But that's because my parents have always voted Labour.
Yeah, I pushed I broke out of that with my family. My family
Did
are
you?
they're centrists in the positive sense that they're like they shift
Mm-hmm.
around. Sometimes the social democrats, sometimes like the liberal party.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I will probably be voting a lot further left than they are this year for sure.
Yeah, I think this is the interesting thing. I've definitely seen very like people are there's no kind of in between at the moment. Everyone is either left or right, and if you're in the middle, people are suspicious.
Well, like that's the thing here. Like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to get too political, but like the very populist right party, the Elderly People's Party,
Hmm.
is losing a lot of support.
Oh, really?
And in the one direction, it's because they've been in power with
Hmm.
about 20% of the vote, and they haven't really gotten much of their policy through.
Hmm.
And like the elderly care still sucks, for example, which is something they campaigned on.
Oh dear,
But
making
they're
promises.
losing votes in two directions, which I think is really interesting. One is there's new parties that are more extreme than they are, but they're also
Uh,
losing support leftwards
mhm.
to our
Yeah.
lefty populist parties, which is interesting to witness.
Oh, definitely. I find politics fascinating.
Hmm.
Not in a sort of like I'm left and you're right. We have to fight kind of
Yeah,
way.
it's
I
just kind
just
of like
find it
why,
really
like
interesting.
when people get the motivation to vote, why do they vote,
Yeah.
and what do they
Why do they
vote
vote?
for? I think that's
Exactly.
hugely interesting.
Me too. I find it really interesting that people, you know, some people make a real effort to go and vote, and they're like, "I'm going to go vote for
Hmm.
this because I truly believe in it." And other people are like, fuck it, I can't be honest," which is fair enough.
Yeah, and like
Um,
some people just kind of vote because, well, that's been the tradition, and I vote the same as my parents, and some people completely reject that.
yeah, I find that fascinating. I love talking to people like, why did you vote that? What do you feel they're going to do for you, that
Hmm.
party? Some people don't like that. I think a lot of people, they hear politics and they're like, "Ooh, we're going to get into an argument."
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Like at the end of the day, that's really the answer to healing political division is
mm,
talking with people. Like integrate them into your worldview, integrate like yourself into theirs too. Because if they understand your perspective, then you might keep voting like different ways, but the reasons you vote are understood in either
yeah,
direction. So you're not seeing each other as opposing forces. You're just kind of, well, I want political representation for my views, and that's okay.
yeah. I think it's important that people get sort of representation for their views. I think that voices need to be heard. I was
Hmm.
listening to a really interesting. Oh, well, my dad was listening to a really interesting. I think it was like a podcast, kind of about. Oh God, what was it about? It was about journalism and the voices that aren't heard, and that repressing far right voices
Hmm.
lead to more people inevitably going over to their side because their voices aren't heard and,
Yeah, yeah,
and
that's their bread and
debated.
butter.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting that that is the case. You can't debate something that isn't spoken of, and you
Hmm.
get soapboxes and stuff online. If, on the right and the left, you see what you want to see because of the way that advertisement works now.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially online, like because
Hugely.
like like that's the thing we didn't. I think that's the thing a lot of people didn't really predict back in the day. Is like, well, this content you're using, Google, Facebook,
Hmm.
if you're on Twitter, probably also Tumblr since they're owned by Verizon now, but
Yeah, definitely Tumblr.
like the whole idea is to keep you watching and keep you interacting with their product because that gives them marketing data and it lets them serve you more ads. So
Yeah,
whatever they need to do to like keep you clicking and keep you active on their site, they're gonna show you that. And
exactly,
I
exactly. And
think that's
outrage sells.
outrage sells, and in particular, and that's something that you're really gonna be aware of if you're like feeling disenfranchised is they will pick up on that because if you feel disenfranchised, they will show you stuff that will keep you engaging to figure out more about this thing you're disenfranchised about. I think that
Definitely.
that's what I fell into. That's really dangerous stuff.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it's dangerous on both sides because that's exactly how I felt.
Hmm.
I felt like, oh, there's no one like me. Gay people aren't represented.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never get to see women being with women. And the ones I do get to see die, and it's like, there's this whole thing about the killing your gays trope, which is
Hmm.
was a huge thing back in, oh God, I think it was 2016. There was a hugely popular TV show which wasn't very good, but anyway, it had canon lesbians on it, and I kind of mock it now, but it was a huge moment in sort of the LGBT movement.
Hmm.
One of the characters was killed off, Lexa or something. Anyway, she was killed off right after her and her girlfriend had sex, and she was like killed by her father figure, and it was a huge, big stink. I mean, really massive.
Hmm.
I mean, you can still go and find all of the stuff online. And that was kind of really rooted in sort of gay people feeling disenfranchised, really feeling like, oh, well, heterosexuals don't care about us.
Mm-hmm.
We're just unimportant, and it does become a
And
rabbit
that's
hole,
ooh,
I
and that's
suppose.
the even more dangerous thing is like it's not. And that's the thing I think that's really important to keep in mind. It's not heterosexual people that are alienating you. It's the people who want to sell TV shows.
Exactly. That
Because
is exactly it.
because that's how marketing works, and that's the thing you're going to keep in mind at the end of the day. Is like a
Precisely.
marketer will do whatever they can to get eyes on their product. Doesn't like
Exactly.
they are in the truest sense apolitical because they don't care.
Exactly. They'll do whatever it takes to sell their
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and that's the thing. I think particularly younger LGBT people don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see that. They just say, "Oh, it's all gay people." Sorry, it's all heterosexual people, and then you've got people of color who don't see themselves in media. It's all white people don't want us to see that, and it
Yeah.
kind of ends up very angry very quickly.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
which is a
it's
shame.
a difficult conversation to have, but I think it's hugely important, like regardless of your political affiliation, because the answers to such a problem are going to be widely different depending on your perspectives. Like, well, like
Definitely.
what we have here in Denmark, for example, is like we have a very strong like artist scholars fund community of
Hmm.
people who just basically like if they like a project they're going to fund it. It doesn't matter if it sells, it doesn't matter if it does well anywhere. And obviously a lot of the people who run that are still male and old and white,
Hmm.
but they are more experimental than they would be if they weren't, like if they had to, go for profit.
Yeah.
So it's like how do you figure out, well, like we kind of wanted to represent people, but we also kind of need a business running.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a kind of really tricky middle ground because you can't piss off your sort of more conservative fans,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't want to piss off the left. But also, you kind of do. It's a bit of a weird one because as I said earlier, outrage sells. It was that whole thing with Gillette releasing that.
Oh yeah, Gillette and what was it, Nike with
Yeah,
Colin Kaepernick earlier, and
yeah.
there
It
was
was
one
like
more.
men
This
be better.
Keurig as well.
Yeah, yeah.
They stopped
That's
advertising on
right.
Fox News, and then people smashed their Keurig coffee machines. And I am
God, yeah.
100% sure some people in like general marketing firms just saw that and realized, holy shit, that's getting a lot of engagement.
Oh, for
We
sure,
need
one
to
hundred
do that.
percent. We need to do that. A genius marketing strategy, absolutely genius.
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
really, it doesn't take an idiot to kind of see that. And frankly, I'm surprised they haven't done it earlier. Um,
I mean, they kind of did. Like, they're experimenting with it earlier. I think Twitter's, like, if you want to just see the hotbed for advertising Twitter, just go onto a brand and just see what they're tweeting about. Because I think it was Moon Pie a
yeah.
while ago that had, like, a series of tweets about being depressed. It's just,
Oh God,
you're a
I remember
brand.
this.
You're not even tweeting as the social media manager of Moon Pie. You're just tweeting as Moon Pie.
Yeah, yeah. And then like Sunny D dips in with like, "You okay, bro?" It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
stop humanizing brands. We know what you're doing.
You're
You know,
selling products. Please just
just stop.
actually just tell us about your product.
Yeah, I prefer that than
Yeah.
this weird anthropomorphization of Mr. Clean. Oof.
Thanks for reminding me about Mr. Clean. That was
You're welcome. You're
such a
welcome.
brilliant idea.
Isn't it just? I mean, it's fabulous. I mean, I'm going to be moving into kind of big data with
Hmm.
my coding and things like that. And advertising is the big thing. I've been hearing a lot about gathering, data gathering. People who have the information are all powerful. Google is just like, whoa, it has its fingers in a lot of pies. Disney, I didn't know this, but Disney owns pretty much everything in the net.
Disney,
Like,
yeah, by
yeah,
now they own like I think it's like 34% of the American movie industry, which is that's
yeah.
ridiculous. That's
It's
huge.
crazy. It's crazy. And it's like, what is Disney? Like, what is Disney's message? And this is the thing.
Ah,
It's like,
they do you know what vertical integration is? Like my
mhm.
background is in entrepreneurship. Basically, vertical integration is the ideas of like horizontal integration. You kind of just buy businesses that do the same thing as you. So that's what Disney does when they buy Marvel, for example, or they buy
Yeah.
the movie rights to Marvel.
Hmm.
Vertical integration is when you buy people who are in different stages of the distributor chain. So that's
Hmm.
something they did back in the I think it was like back in the 70s or something. Disney bought a lot of cinemas,
Yeah.
and I think that's what they're getting ready to do again. Is just buy cinemas. because that means they can set the ticket prices where they want. And
Of course, yeah. It's a conspiracy. Actually, no. It's
in
just
the
good
literal
business.
sense, it's a business conspiracy, or it's not like a conspiracy. It's just like it's a company that's looking out for its own interests.
Exactly.
There has to be several
It is.
businesses doing the same thing for it to be a conspiracy. This is just
That's true.
capitalism. This is just
It's just
capitalism.
capitalism, yeah. We're in the late stage capitalism hell.
Woo.
Woo. We're gonna watch the world die around us. It's cool. We're gonna drown and then boil. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
I mean, hey,
it's
we're gonna
fine.
be dead, so it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's cool. I'm just gonna buy as many iPhones as I can. Fuck it. No, I think it's good that we can laugh.
Kind of have to. Like, it's kind of bizarre every now and then to see what's going on in
Yeah.
the news. But
Oh my god, yeah. Like today, Theresa May resigning. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna die. Brexit, what a nightmare.
it's not even over yet.
Oh no, it won't be. This is the thing. My theory with Brexit is that they're just going to keep putting it off, and then in 15 years' time, people are going to be like, "Remember Brexit?" And
It's
we're all
gonna.
going to
That's a
laugh.
very British way to go about doing something you don't want to do. It's just like not do it. Just wait.
Sorry, my dog's.
That's alright.
Um,
Very
yeah,
excited
definitely.
dog.
Yeah, I think someone's at the door.
Hmm.
But yeah, Brexit. It is a very British way to do things. Really, just kind of laugh and pretend it didn't happen. It's fine. We didn't colonize all of the planet, other than 22 countries.
No. It didn't happen.
We're fine. It never happened. We just drink tea, and have stiff upper lips. It's fine. But yeah. God. Anyway,
Like-
yeah. So yeah.
If you want to like circle back to the topic of like in the context of talking with people and like letting them know you're non-binary, I would argue like not necessarily to depoliticize it, but to contextualize it for people who are not understanding of your situation.
Definitely, I think that's definitely a kind of good way to go for, because people, at the end of the day, people are people, and they do understand things. Particularly if you frame it.
People have an identity, and that's that's an easy thing to key them in on. It's like, well, if I started referring to you as female when you clearly identify as male, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that might be probably what I should do. I haven't been open with the sort of the people in WoW, sort of the people in the guild yet. Probably because I was kind of anxious about it, but I kind of feel a lot more comfortable about it. I mean, I'm not going to make like a huge post like, "Hey guys, you must call me this now."
Yeah.
Like,
here is 75 pronouns I will accept, and none other.
Yeah. Yeah. If you refer to me as anything other than a tree, I'm gonna kill you.
Gonna report you to a gym and ignore you forever.
Yeah, blocked and reported.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah, I think I'll do that then. I think that's probably the sort of wisest way to go about it. Kind of just make it relatable is kind of the best thing to do.
Yeah, because like in general, people have especially people who play World of Warcraft, they are either socially isolated or socially alienated in some ways. Like the idea of coming to understand, well, someone doesn't appreciate this because it doesn't really gel with their identity, that's something they're used to. They can understand that for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's also why, like, you're saying about how people in WoW have a very strong identity of being isolated. I think that's kind of why the faction war, in BFA has been so. Oof.
It's been very toxic with the player base, and I'm actually not really sure I like Blizzard for doing that, because
no, me neither.
It doesn't seem like where does this end? Like when the marketing for BFA is over.
This is the thing. The marketing was sort of pushing people to.
The marketing was actually really toxic. Like it's just people who don't get along because they have the wrong gamer hoodie. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. I find that so irksome. Frankly, I thought it was just ridiculous.
And the thing at the end of that is like, what are you attempting to sell here?
Yeah, what are you trying to sell? They're trying to sell the vision and it's kind of the drama and the toxicity, and it's
it's players. It's not a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
These are real people interacting, and now they have the ability to interact across a faction barrier that used to be very rigid. It's like, how do you plan on dealing with that?
They didn't.
And then it is so Blizzard to just set up a huge theme and say, listen, this faction is going to focus on division, and then just kind of drop the ball about 5 months later.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I just, I kind of feel sorry for Alliance players. All of the stuff with the Horde is very exciting. I mean, it's
The story
not
is actually,
2.0.
it's not like the greatest writing or whatever, but I mean
Yeah.
the themes are interesting. It's like
Oh, definitely.
Like,
I
so-
do love a good sort of faction
Mhm.
story. But
like
the
Sylvanas is
Alliance,
clearly a horrible ruler in the well. Her
yeah,
optics are horrible, and her ideas seem horrible. But in like a real politic context, she's getting stuff done. I guess.
yeah, this
Is
is
that
the weird
worth it?
thing. Right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like she is the, technically the most successful leader the Horde has ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it
Yet
costs
she's
genocide.
and
I mean,
yet she still
you know,
eats babies
yeah, exactly.
because
And
Blizzard and
you get
Nuance
people
is not
very
great.
heated about that. Oh
Yeah.
my god, yeah. Blizzard and writing women.
I mean,
Oh, God.
Blizzard ain't writing any character to be honest. Like they've just never been great at it.
I know, God. Yeah, you're right.
I mean,
you're
there's
right.
a reason. There's a reason Thrall ended up having the nickname Green Jesus. It's
That's true.
because his character arc is basically Jesus with the number
Oh,
plate
God.
filed off.
I think that the kind of mistake they made with Thrall was making it so like Medicine's life story, and like his influence was very strongly felt. And it's like, this is too real. This is just too real. Please, Medicine, pull up your pants. We don't need to see that.
It was like there's a lot like there's the moment in Cataclysm where there's a literal storyline about him being split into 4 different negative parts of his personality, and you have to piece him
Yeah.
back together. It's just like,
Oh God.
are you sure this isn't a god and not an orc? Like,
Yeah.
this,
Oh my God.
supposedly he's just a normal guy. I'm not sure I'm convinced about that anymore.
I think he's actually like, he's a Titan. He's a Void Lord.
He is
Something.
basically like one of the evil gods, yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't know it. Ooh.
Oh, that's actually the big twist at the end of BFA.
Oh
Thrall
god,
is
please don't give them ideas.
Thrall is an old god. I think I would die on the spot if that happened. But anyway, I actually
wouldn't
didn't
put
play
it beyond
Cataclysm.
them.
You know what? I wouldn't either. I'm half expecting like Anduin to be like, actually, and then like transforms and it's suddenly fucking Yogg-Saron.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just every
That's
fact,
crazy.
every racial leader is an old god. Sorry about that.
Yeah, apart from Sylvanas, she's actually a good guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Oops. Pull that rug right out from under
We
you.
told you it wasn't gonna be the same as last time. This is
Yeah.
exciting, right?
Yep. Oh, jeez. Let's Oh, hang on a sec.
No worries.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what's going to happen in BFA. I've called it. Everyone is an old god. Unfortunately.
It's truly the end times, but
I kind of hope there's an old god expansion. I mean, they're kind of leading up to it. I really hope it's
Yeah,
just not like
either, like,
8.3.
it's that or they're just gonna end it in this patch, which seems plausible, but not like I don't know.
Oh,
Maybe.
God. I mean, maybe, yeah. I'm fully expecting, actually, maybe a dragon expansion.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, with all the hints leading up to the Dragon Isles and all that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, was there anything else you like wanted to bring up or
No, I was. That was kind of all I really wanted to talk about. I think the kind of conversation around it was fabulous. And if you're up to kind of maybe doing like another video with like, discussing various other political stuff, I'd
Yeah,
be
for sure.
down.
For
Because
sure.
I read a lot, and it's really nice talking to someone about it. I can't talk to anyone
Hmm.
about
Yeah, I mean
it. My parents
that's
hate
I
it.
was gonna say like that's the challenge I found as well. Is like people in general just want people to talk to, like regardless of what they're going through. Just generally what people lack is a social sphere, I guess, with just people they
Yeah.
can talk to.
Definitely. I mean, to be honest with you, my kind of, because I work from home,
Mm-hmm.
I'm very isolated, and the people at university that were my friends, they weren't very good people.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of ended up in this situation where most of my friends are online, and those that I have, I don't really speak to very often. The only person who is in my life consistency is kind of like my girlfriend, which is fine. She's my best friend too. Like, that's cool. But it's nice to talk to someone who isn't her.
Yeah.
in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, I get that.
So sort of actually joining the Frozen Four clan, really, I've been wanting to join it for years, literally
Hmm.
years. I'm not trying to blow wind up your ass or anything. I don't do that. But I've been wanting to join for years. It's always been something that I was like on AA, like the archives, like, ooh, they look so cool. Um, and
Yeah, I
now I'm
mean,
kind
we've
of
been
here.
doing our own thing for years, so.
Yeah, exactly, which I really admired because I've been in so many guilds where it just wasn't like that. And now
Hmm.
I'm here. It's been really nice to kind of talk to people. I know I'm not online very often. I find it difficult to come online during the week because of work.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fine.
but yeah, so
I
I'm
don't
really
have
glad to be here.
strict activity requirements for that exact reason. I know people have a life outside the game, so.
Yeah, exactly. Thank God you do. Some people just do not.
Yeah,
Note that.
and like that's fine. They just gotta set their expectations after that, which,
Yeah,
I think,
definitely.
considering the quality of people they get.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the last guild I was in, I was actually an officer. I won't name any names, but I
Mm.
was an officer, and I said immediately, my old guild, Aliceborn, fell apart because I had work,
Hmm.
and the officers that I had were not. Then they weren't very good. I'll be honest. I was like, I'm going away for a month to visit my girlfriend. Can you guys look after the place? And they were like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I come back and everyone's gone. So I was
Hmm.
like, shit, okay. So we kind of joined this other guild, and nightmare.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with officers. Is like you gotta give them, like you gotta feel out your officers pretty early on. It's like, are they the kind of people who need micromanagement? Or are they people who can just, like, as long as you give them some kind of direction, they're fine.
Yeah,
And I kind of
exactly.
sift through officers a fair bit because sometimes I genuinely need people who just, well, they'll do their own thing and travel along. And sometimes
Yeah,
I need people who, I'm fine with having people who need direction a little bit.
definitely. I think that's the thing with sort of the master. That's what I learned
Hmm.
immediately. It was like, this person needs micromanagement. This person is fine to just kind of do whatever. And then the shocking thing was the person I thought didn't need it did need to be micromanaged,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
it was
Like
like, oh shit.
it's one thing what people say they need in terms of management. It's another thing entirely what they actually need.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. That's the thing, and you don't know
Hmm.
until the moment strikes, really. But yeah, yeah, officerhood. Oof. I used to be like really into kind of trying to be. Well, no, I wouldn't say I was a social climber in guilds. I wasn't like that. I just was always available, and
Hmm.
GMs would very often be like, "Oh, nice, I'll nab you,"
Hmm.
because I have the really unfortunate, I suppose, bad luck of joining guilds that are kind of just on the precipice of falling apart. Not saying the Frozen Four clan is at all, but
I mean, you might have called a prediction there. We'll see.
yeah, suddenly everything collapses. That is something my girlfriend tells me a lot about. Is sort of the moment I get into a guild that's kind of falling apart because I'm the one who's active and doing stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, I haven't done any events yet with you guys, but I will be getting my shit together and doing one soon. I should imagine, because I'm doing stuff. The GM is like, oh yes, someone who can actually do stuff, and immediately kind of grabs me, and then I end up kind of getting sucked into World of Warcraft and neglecting my girlfriend and
Hmm.
everything else, and that's kind of the worry. That was the worry about me returning because I
Yeah,
quit.
I can understand that.
Um, but yeah, that isn't happening, which is nice. It's nice to just be a member of a guild,
Hmm.
um, and it's a nice guild. People are nice and there, so it's a nice
Yeah,
change.
I'm a little bit more strict moderation wise with what I allow, and I have, like, over the years we've just kind of set up a few boundaries. It's like what is acceptable behavior, what is not acceptable behavior, and how do we react when there's unacceptable behavior. That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was the hardest thing to kind of deal with as a GM myself when I was one.
Hmm.
Was kind of like, how do I react to
Yeah.
situations?
Yeah.
You have to be impartial
Hmm.
as much as possible, but also firm.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the thing I've had a lot of advantages from is, like, my background is in entrepreneurship, which means we've
Mm-hmm.
had a fair amount of leadership courses. So just
Yeah.
kind of the idea of detaching yourself from the situation and saying, okay, listen, we have a situation here. What's the best outcome for the people involved and the
Mm-hmm.
organization as a whole?
Yeah, that's
Just
exactly
kind of
it.
take yourself out of the situation completely.
Exactly, and then you can think with a clear head.
Hmm.
And like, I think that's like the really good thing that I like about WoW and leading guilds is it teaches you a lot about people. It
Oh yeah.
teaches you how to deal with situations. It's fantastic, really. Um, and it's really useful, particularly kind of working in an office situation as
Mm-hmm.
well. You know, you know how people are going to react because you've lived the worst it could possibly be on World of Warcraft.
Oh yeah. There are some. I wouldn't say crazy, but there are some strange people on the internet.
Oh
That's
my
for sure.
god, yeah. Oh my god, yeah. The thing is, I think the reason why they're so strange is because they're kind of hidden.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean
I can
they're.
rock up on my tune and it's like, oh, that's Torek, but they don't really know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how that changes people,
Yep.
which it does. And I think
Yeah,
that's
for
the other
sure. Like
thing with it. Yeah.
being like the veil of anonymity. Like, it's a very popular thing on the internet to say like it shows you who people really are. I think there's a lot of bullshit. It shows you like what people might want to portray themselves as.
Yeah, definitely, because it's all well and good being behind a mask, but
Mm-hmm.
actually, when you really come to it, they're not like that at all usually.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was still like a pretty avid World of Warcraft player when I was hitting the shit for a long time,
Mm.
and I was, I felt like shit on the servers. I was pretty functional in the game still. I still
Mm-hmm.
ran a guild. I still, went to events and such. And then I think the guild went dormant. I told the guys like I'm not gonna log on for a little while, and I think I went. I canceled my subscription for about 4 months, and then I came back
Mm.
and say, okay, let's start over.
Yeah, there's something quite refreshing about restarting.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of the restart of the sort of a name. I think that's the thing about Argent Dawn. All the other RP servers, you're kind of anonymous, really. But Ardent Dawn people remember who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that was really interesting. Before Torak, I hadn't really experienced that before. But because he was a GM, because etc. etc. Ashen Vale happened.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, people were like, "Oh, I know who you are," and I was like, "Who the fuck are you? I don't know who you are." That was a real trip. Really strange.
Mm-hmm.
Uncomfortable. I'm not keen on that kind of attention. I don't like being known by people I don't know. Um, but yeah, interesting. I think it'd be fascinating to study it all. Really.
I mean, I think there's a few sociology studies on World of Warcraft by now. I think there's a few Oregon Dawn players who've done sociology studies on this as well, like the phenomenon of
Really.
role playing in online spaces.
Ah, that's fascinating. I'll definitely have to have a look at that.
Yeah,
I
I
think
can send you
that's
some
great.
links later. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
there's still threads about it.
that's great. Yeah, I'd love that. I'm really interested in all that kind of stuff. I think role playing is fascinating. It's
Mm-hmm.
really fascinating stuff. I mean, you definitely can tell when someone's playing a character and when someone's playing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's like it's interesting digging into the motivations of why people roleplay
yeah,
and how those can change over time as well.
definitely,
Because
definitely.
ultimately, like roleplay is just an exercise in empathy. Like it is improv acting, basically, just in a
And it's
computer.
great. It's great fun. I mean, I did creative writing and theatre at
Mm-hmm.
university. I've done theatre all my life, and kind of stepping into a virtual world while you are acting is completely different from on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great fun. I find it. I mean, I love roleplay. I always have done. But it's kind of interesting, as you said, kind of digging in behind why people do it. And you've
Mm-hmm.
got people who are really shy who would hate ever to get up on stage.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Here they are in World of Warcraft role playing. It's great to see. I
Yeah, I
think it's
think like
great.
you read that news story that came out a while ago about the I think it was quadriplegic, the guy from Norway who played on Argent Dawn.
Yeah, I did. That was so good. I
That was a
made me
fascinating read.
cry a
Yeah,
bit.
it's
It
interesting.
was
Like
great.
I'm pretty sure I've seen him online a few times back when he
Have
was.
you? Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Brilliant. No, I mean, I think World of Warcraft has so much good in it.
Mm-hmm.
So much good, and people are so. Some people can be so kind and generous and just kind of really lovely people, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have people who just are not.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like
Yeah.
I don't think anyone is consistently one or the other. It often comes
Mm,
down to who they identify with as friends and whatnot.
definitely, and I think it's also kind of, but that plays a huge role um, in the role play that you get as well,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of kind of brings me on to kind of asking you, when the whole rock guard thing was going down, what were you kind of feeling? Was there a lot of communication between you and
Uh,
Errol? Or...
no, that because that's his thing, and I can respect him for that or whatever. Like he just ideally he wants minimum out of character interaction,
Which is fair
and
enough.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair enough. It's not necessarily the way I wanted it, but that's whatever, and that's
yeah,
how I engage them as well. It's just like, well, I did my thing, and he was if they were around, then they'd notice.
Yeah, because that was like some of
I
the
got a
best roleplay I've ever been in.
I got a
Amazing.
bit tired about it when they started showing up at events where we didn't really anticipate them, and apparently they
Mm,
anticipated we would just run away. It's like, I mean, we're stuck. How do we escape from the situation? How do they expect us to escape from the situation?
yeah, that's a bit too far, I think.
And then I just kind of I called it off at the end. I told him like I got a few. I needed to talk with a few people in the guild afterwards about they were having. And like I wouldn't say panic attacks, but anxiety attacks in those events, and it's just like this is I'm not
Too
interested in
far.
that. So.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I pieced out
Mhm.
after I think it was the Baron stuff. When we were all kind of at the crossroads, which was some of the best roleplay I've ever been part of. It was amazing when we all kind of walked out
Mhm.
in force. It was great fun. But kind of after that, I pieced out, so I didn't really see the kind of conclusion
Mhm.
to all of that. But yeah, I mean, it was terrifying. I went to the Druid Moot,
Mhm.
and it was after the Druid Moot. They actually attacked
Yeah, I
the
remember. I was there.
crossroads. Do you remember that? Yeah, and that was scary as fuck. It was
Yeah,
terrifying.
which is, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. At the end of the day, that's probably not like a super healthy thing. Like if you get out of character terrified of the situation, there's something
Yeah,
wrong there. I would argue
exactly.
anyway.
I agree. I think it was kind of a big reason. Another one of the bigger reasons why I kind of left. I was like, this is a
Mhm.
bit too intense. Actually, I'm gonna peace out. I mean, the big reason I quit was because there was like a shit ton of transphobia in the guild I was in,
Mhm.
and my GM did pretty much nothing about it.
Mhm.
I was having a full scale like panic attack, which I think I've only had like two in my life.
Mhm.
That one being one of the two. And she was just like, yeah, good luck. And then I left,
Mhm.
completely quit the guild, deleted all my characters. I mean, that was how like totally and utterly like, done I was. I was like, I'm not coming back.
Mhm.
And yeah, she eventually kicked this person out because loads of people raised a huge fuss about it, but me being upset about it wasn't enough. So I was like,
Yeah,
"Fuck
that's
that."
kind of
Yeah.
like guild leadership by whoever complains the loudest.
Hmm.
Very, very bad idea. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's what people default to if they haven't had like management training or haven't had experience with it. But yeah, don't do it. It's
Yeah.
gonna bite you in the ass one day.
Yeah, for sure it did. I mean, it has done, I think.
Mhm.
And the weird thing is when I came back, the GM, I had a huge bust up with my partner. We actually nearly split up. I mean, that
Mhm.
was a big fight, and it was all that shit happened. And this GM basically blamed me and thought it was all because of her, and she was very icy to me when I returned, and she kind of took it upon herself to think like that it was all about her, it was all because of her, and it was like actually had nothing to do with you.
Mhm.
And when I told her that, she got really upset with me, and we had another fight because I was like, "Look, she invited my character back to her guild, and I was like, I'm not comfortable being here. Can you boot my character out? It's nothing personal. I just don't want to join any guilds for a while."
Yeah, yeah.
She didn't like that, so we had a huge fight about it.
Mm.
And it's just like, just let it go, dude. It's nothing to do with you. Just leave it.
Yeah, but like ooh, that's the thing that it can feel very personal if you're not
Oh,
able to
yeah.
like separate it yourself. And
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely been there, and I've had to be like, actually, it's nothing personal. It's just some people's journey is different, and
mhm.
that's completely fine. And it takes a big person to let that go. And it's
Yeah, of
really
course.
difficult.
Like because if it's something you've built and someone says this isn't for me, it's
Hmm.
just like, well, what's wrong with it? I mean,
Yeah,
there's
like,
not necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just not for me.
exactly. And it can be difficult to swallow.
Mhm.
And it's like, my pride, which is fair enough. I've definitely had that feeling before with my girl when people left. It was like it really hurts,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, you've just got to be like, you know what, that's their journey, and that's none of their business.
Yeah, I mean, I make a point out of usually asking like when people leave, it's just like, well, like is it what like why did you leave basically? And so sometimes I get an answer is like, well, the guild wasn't really for me, so okay, that's whatever. And maybe I
Yeah.
get a like recommendation for something I can actually change. Is like, well, there weren't enough events. Okay,
Okay. Fair enough.
fair enough.
Yeah.
That's something I can work on if it's like something I want to do.
Yeah. I think the other thing was with leading is this whole thing of like you having to provide the entertainment, and
Hmm.
if it's just you doing it, you can start to feel very
You get
bitter
burned
about
out
it.
very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's this kind of feeling like they're entitled to my time,
Hmm.
and I definitely started to feel that way. I was like, I
Yeah,
can't.
that's
Yeah.
the sooner you can dispel that from your like thinking, the better, because it's gonna get worse the more you let it fester.
Exactly, exactly. That's why I ended up just being like, this isn't working, so
Hmm.
I'm at ease, which is fair enough. I think it's fascinating stuff. I mean, I think sort of talking about how GMs feel, because it's not like DMing in D&D at all.
Yeah, not at all, no, because
None of it.
you have a lot more of a social responsibility in a role playing guild,
Yeah, definitely. And
because you're not just meeting up one day a week. You are
yeah,
technically building an atmosphere for people who play the game as well in general.
yeah, and it's like every day. You have to be
Hmm.
there
Yeah,
every
of
day.
course.
And if you're not, you have to have someone who is,
Hmm.
you know, you trust enough to do that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically always on call on Discord if people need me, even when I'm away from the house.
Yeah.
Like one of the things, one of the things with the rod card actually happened while I was on vacation. So I woke up at 5 a.m. and got I think I had 50 Discord messages. It's like, okay,
Oh my god.
deep breath, go take a
Yeah.
shower, and then we'll figure this out.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah, that must have been quite difficult.
It was okay. Like it wasn't the first time I had something like that where I just woke up to 100 messages, and it's like, okay,
Okay.
this is a situation. Let's deal with it. Most of the people were asleep by the time I woke up, so.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think it's fascinating to kind of see, like, where is it going to go from here? I mean,
Hmm.
you know what is kind of next.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I know what I want to do, but I mean, I'm just gonna keep doing it until something changes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think this is kind of the Horde storyline is kind of paramount to how
Yeah,
things end up happening. I mean, we both know really what's going to end up happening. She's going to be ousted, and you know,
we'll see. I am so not convinced.
really,
I
I think
am.
she's going to be
I
ousted.
At the moment I'm expecting like a Kerrigan storyline where she did it for the greater good, and then that's okay.
Oh God, you know
I
what? You're
don't
probably
trust
right.
Blizzard's storytelling at all.
I don't trust them either. The best thing we can hope for. I'm sad about Sylvanas. She was my favorite character.
Yeah, she's a cool
Um,
character.
yeah, when I was 17, I actually got sexually assaulted. Blah, 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 trauma.
Mm.
And I really felt a connection with Sylvanas. So I kind
Mm-hmm.
of read her storyline as being kind of an assault allegory. You know how she had her life ripped from her by Arthas, and like none of it was with consent, and it was all very.
Yeah, I mean the
Um,
way she's written in the books is very much an allegory for that as well.
yeah, definitely, and I really felt a connection to that. And then now she's like evil. It's like, oh, okay.
Spooky evil.
Yeah, it's like, okay. She's like, I'm turning into my abuser, and it's like, don't do that. But okay, okay, Blizzard, you're fine. It's fine. Just give me Volpera, and I will forgive you.
We'll see. There's still like a couple expansions to go.
That's true. Yeah, I do wonder about that. I do wonder if they're going to take WoW Classic and just going to go in another direction.
I think they're waiting to see how big the reception for that is.
Mm.
I mean, if they can do both, it's
Yeah.
obviously ideal.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely going to be playing WoW
Like
Classic. I never
they
got
already
the
said,
chance.
like if the reception is good for WoW Classic, they're just gonna release Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King servers.
That's really cool. I really want. I joined in MOP, so I never
Hmm.
got the chance to play either of those expansions as they were happening, and I really want to play them. So I'm like, I really want
Get
to play
prepared for a lot of tedious grinding. That's all I can say.
Classic. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. Right, I should probably let you go. I've taken up a lot of your time.
Yeah, that's fine.
Um,
Some of these conversations ended up lasting like 6 hours, so don't worry about it.
Okay, that's fair enough. You're a really good conversationalist, by the way. It's been fabulous talking
thank
to
you.
you. I'd love to talk to you again.
Yeah, of course.
It's good fun. It's good fun. I'd like to introduce you maybe to my partner. She also IDs as non-binary like me,
Mhm.
but she's a bit more kind of relaxed about pronouns.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'd really like to introduce you to her. Maybe tempt her to come back to World of Warcraft.
Yeah, sure.
Just maybe. But yeah, it was brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. I'm gonna go get a cup of tea and a
Yeah.
cigarette.
I think we have an event actually in a little while.
Yes.
First
Excellent.
aid
I'll be
event.
there.
Yeah, perfect. Take care.
Brilliant. I'll be there. Brilliant. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.